Good afternoon, everyone. Happy National Coming Out Day. Welcome to our panel event presented by Silicon Valley Pride. My name is Saldi Sariban, the Chief Marketing Officer of the organization. Silicon Valley Pride organizes year-round educational and social event, not just the annual Pride Parade and Festival. I'm here today to introduce you to our moderator for today's panel event. Nicole Altmarano goes by she, her, hers, is the interim CEO of Silicon Valley Pride. She was born and raised in San Jose, currently works in the City of San Jose City Manager's Budget Office. Her wife and her two beautiful babies, which are Chihuahuas, are her world. She's an outspoken individual who stands up for what she believes. Please welcome Nicole.
Hi, thank you, Saldi. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. I'll leave it up to you.
Great.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Silicon Valley Pride's panel discussion on National Coming Out Day. Like Saldi introduced me, my name is Nicole Altmarano, she, her pronouns. National Coming Out Day was established in 1988 and was for our LGBTQ plus community to celebrate when one decides to come out of the closet and live their true, authentic selves and live in their truth. I'm excited to welcome our panel. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and have the panelists introduce themselves. Why don't we first start with Vivian?
Hi, my name is Vivian Moussa. I identify as she, her. I'm a school teacher by day, and I really enjoy spending time with my kid.
Thank you, Vivian. Welcome. Let's go ahead and have Gregg come up.
Hi, my name is Gregg, or 3G, he, him pronouns, and I am the evening DJ and the production director for Mix 106.5 in San Jose, California. And yeah, I am proud bisexual.
Thanks, Gregg. Welcome. Let's see, Jeff.
Hi, yeah, my name is Jeffrey. I work in tech. I'm head of the client servicing platforms for commercial bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and came out a couple of years ago. I'm also on the board with Nicole of Pride, and try to get active in the community. And when I'm not doing that, I try to have some fun. I like to be outside.
Wonderful. Welcome, Jeff. And Sarah.
Hey folks, and happy Sunday. My name is Sarah. I go by she, her pronouns. I am the Chief Diversity Officer for Silicon Valley Pride. I also work with the Office of LGBTQ Affairs as their senior program or senior management analyst, as well as on the board of directors or the board of governors for the Human Rights Campaign San Francisco, as well as many other LGBTQ groups. So pleasure to be here today, and thank you for having me.
Welcome, everyone. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. Let's ask the first and obvious question. Tell me about your coming out experience. What was that like for each of you?
I'll go ahead and start. So I fortunately picked a university that was very open and accepting. I grew up in Southern California, Los Angeles specifically, in a Egyptian household. I'm first generation American, so my coming out experience was quite difficult. But like I said, when I went to UC Santa Cruz, my second year at the university, I started to have these quite vivid dreams of being with women, which was really weird and awkward for me, and I was quite uncomfortable. Because of my upbringing, my background, I really was not okay with myself being gay. However, the friends and the supports I got from the university, they were very open and it was not a big deal. However, that still didn't quite allow me that opportunity to be okay with myself. So my experience really did involve a lot of working on myself, journaling, therapy, and trying to be okay with it. And it took a bit of time, but as the people at the university accepted me, that was helpful. I first came out as bisexual, which seemed to be more a comfort space for me. In all honesty, if I had found a man and I thought that I could get married, then I probably would have dropped the label. But I knew that that wasn't really my true self. So about another 6 months or so after that, I had come out as a lesbian, and it was really freeing. It was very, very freeing. Yeah, and that's kind of, in short, my experience.
So I can go next if you want. So I mean, I always knew, I guess, looking back, I think that I always really knew what was going on. But as Vivian said, I also kind of grew up in an environment of a very Christian environment, a very Bible Belt environment, a very filled with negative reasons and negative inputs and stuff. Plus, by the time I got into college and began to really think about this, then suddenly, all of a sudden, we were hit by this notion where being gay meant you got a terrible disease and died. And so I had all these impacts. So I tried to deny it, and I looked for other reasons, and I searched and searched for some other explanation about what was going on and what I felt. Did my best to fit in and try. Got married, had kids, pursued, the world and startups, moved to the suburbs, had 2 kids and a dog. Well, I mean, the dog was the kid's, not mine. But it was always there for me, and it was always there, and I went through this period, and as I began to realize and became stronger and stronger, I started to explore these ideas, but I had all this responsibility, and this responsibility I took really seriously. But ultimately, those responsibilities ebbed. My children got older, they got smarter, they got more independent, as you will. And so one day I had this conversation, and I continued to have these discussions about what was going on with my wife. And one day I had a conversation with her, just kind of told her what I was feeling. And, she said, well, what do you think you should do? And I said, I think I should come out. And she said, well, you should do that. And it was a difficult process. I went through the telling my friends, telling the family, all of that kind of stuff. Everybody was actually very, very accepting. Nobody knew, which, still to this day is somewhat shocking to me after all that effort I put into to be clandestine and to hide away, my true thoughts and feelings. And in general, it proved to be very good. At the end of the day, my wife, of course, was part of this process. She was very supportive. My kids took a long time to kind of adapt to it, but ultimately, also became very accepting and very supportive of me. So, I probably have the longest coming out story, given it took me so many years to do, but, eventually I got there.
That's great.
I can go next. So I actually just recently came out as bisexual. It's actually something that I've known for a long time about myself. I've primarily dated women throughout my years of life, my 34 years of life, and I knew probably about 10 years ago that I really was also attracted to men as well, and I didn't really know if it would be if it really needed to be a part of my identity. And at the time I was just like, I don't know what's, I was in a committed relationship, and over the years, I just kind of started more and more accepting of the fact that, no, this is actually a part of me, and this is a part of my identity and who I am. And I made the decision this year. I was talking to my partner and a few close friends of mine, and we started really talking about like how is this, because this is a part of my identity, and I needed to become more comfortable with it. And I've always been, I was raised in an extremely accepting environment, and when I finally did come out to my family and to my friends, everybody has just been so supportive. And I'm sorry, I'm like kind of tearing up a little bit, but like everybody has just been so accepting of me. And I've even had a couple of friends like reach out to me and be like, we've known for a while. But I'm still kind of learning the ropes of like how to properly express myself, and how to make myself more open to the world. And so I'm very, very thankful for this opportunity to join you guys.
We're very glad you're here.
Thanks for
Yes.
sharing. That's awesome. I love hearing stories like that. I love celebrations like National Coming Out Day because it allows people to talk about some of the stories they have and make kind of like those connections in terms of kind of like common experiences. Whenever anyone asks me about my coming out journey, I always think to myself, like, which one? Because I feel that coming out is an ongoing process because there's just so many people that I haven't seen for a long time. I have relatives, I have family. I also have a bunch of friends, and like for me, like coming out, like I remember the day I came out, and it was around 7 years ago when I came out to my partner at the time, which we had to break up, and that was would be considered a heterosexual relationship because at that point I was still living in the male identity. However, after coming out as trans, I found a lot of solace in certain places. So work was very accepting for me in coming out, but in terms of coming out like over and over and over again, some of the harder moments I remember is coming out to family, which some folks said they were accepting, then you see later down the line that for some reason or another, you just lose connection with them. Some folks say they love you and thank you for sharing that, but down the line, they're just not with you. And some folks take a while to learn how to adjust and, deal with having someone trans in their life. So for me, it was difficult at the very beginning. I spent a lot of time finding myself, I used Instagram and social media as a platform to be able to express gender. But during that time, I was one of those, sad clowns. And I'm not calling myself a clown, trust, but in terms of having this kind of like social media life where I could just prove I could do it, I could be and present more feminine than anyone else and do it so much so that I could lead fashion. That's where I found a lot of my affirmation. But at the same time, this was a lot of a big moment where I had to live in solitude. So I did a lot of hiking, I did a lot of self-reflection, and I really leveraged and used my workspace to be able to express my gender identity and find some community. And it wasn't until I started to come out to more and more people where I found a greater sense of my queer community. So for me, the coming out experience, even to this day, is still ongoing because there's so many folks I haven't seen in a while and folks that are just still not understanding what it means to be queer and trans.
Thank you all for sharing. I definitely, Sarah, what you just said about having to come out over and over again. I always think like, oh, I've come out a long time ago, but just the other day I had an electrician at my house and he asked me if my husband was here to help with the electrical panel. And I was like, well, my wife's here, but she doesn't know how to do that. So I'm the best one you're going to talk to. But I had to come out again. So I get it is an ongoing process. And every time you do, it's an act of bravery. So yeah, congratulations to us all for being here and have come out. Let's ask a follow-up question. What made you realize, when you were about to come out, when you were thinking about coming out, what made you realize that you were ready to?
I guess I'll start up again. I guess I realized, well, my vivid dreams, it was kind of hard to like not accept that my dreams were really significant, but also I did go to a university. It was very welcome and open. So I did get to see a lot of gay people on campus that represented myself, but maybe visually didn't. Then I was working very hard to pass as straight, even though I'm still struggling. Even when I was able to, my first girlfriend that I started dating, and we were really close, but she also knew that I really, really continued to struggle. I think I couldn't deny it anymore. It was something that was me. And as like a lot of us else, kind of some people might hear, it's like, oh, you tell your friends or like people you knew when you were younger. They're like, oh yeah, we were waiting for you to come out. We were waiting. We always knew. And I was like, what? Like I didn't understand that as much. But I think it was pretty clear that I couldn't deny. And I tried dating a couple of guys, and there was just something missing. Like I knew it felt weird, like there was something missing. And so when I did date my first girlfriend, then at that point it made it very clear, like, yep, I'm a lesbian, I'm not bisexual, and that's kind of gonna be it. And then I started to plant myself into other groups on campus. I tried to be a little bit more part of the culture, the queer culture, doing things on campus so that I could feel more that welcoming feeling. But yeah, I still have those moments where it was still hard. I still remember one amazing shuttle driver at UC Santa Cruz who would just talk to me, and I would cry and blab and just have those moments of like, I'm having a hard time. But she said, you really can do it. You really can come out. This is a great environment to do that. And, I was so lucky and fortunate that I picked the university and I was very clueless, very, very clueless and extremely sheltered. I had no idea that UC Santa Cruz was this gay friendly. So I was very lucky. And yeah, and that was what pushed me to come out even further.
I've been like really, I've tried in the last like 10 years or so to be as close to the LGBTQ community as I possibly can. I've been to a bunch of Pride events, and I got this at a Pride festival probably I think 3 years ago at Silicon Valley Pride when it was in when we were able to have those. And I remember that like even then I was really like I know that I'm also attracted to not just women. I'm attracted to men and non-binary people as well. And I didn't quite know how to define the way that that it worked. And it really was through that the conversations that I was having with my partner, and really like the first thing I do, and I'm sure that the rest of you have done this too, is you go online and you start Googling, okay, what is this sexuality? What is this sexuality? And so I Googled pansexuality, and I looked that up, and I said, okay, that's pretty close. And then I Googled bisexuality, and as I was reading the definition, and by the end of that definition, I went, this is me. Like you really do feel like this is, and I don't know how to properly express the way that like the fullness you feel once you read something and you know that this is your identity, and you go, I absolutely am this. And when I realized that it was time was this past summer, and I was like, I think I need to be more honest with myself. And it was then that I started talking to some friends of mine, and I really was like, I'm pretty sure I'm not straight. And every time I would talk to somebody, they would say, take some time, figure it out, and when you know your truth, speak your truth. And it was probably like in August, I was like, I think I need to come out. I think I'm ready. And I waited until Bisexual Awareness Day to really like to actually start coming out, and I made like a formal announcement to my friends and family. And I just remember I was talking to my coworkers. We were in a meeting, and I told them, and everybody was like, we love you. That's fantastic. And I almost started crying. I was so happy that they were so accepting of me. And then like my family was so accepting of me. And like every friend, so I made a public post about being a part of this panel, and a bunch of people have reached out to me since, and they were all like, we love you. We accept you. We see you. And I don't know. It it makes me so happy that we have so many people in our lives that are as accepting of who we are as people and allow us to speak our truths in such a way. And it just every day I'm looking forward to this continual evolution of an understanding of who I am, if that makes any sense. I'm still kind of parsing through a lot of this stuff in my brain as well. So I apologize if that was a little kind of all over the place.
It wasn't at all. It was perfect. So I have a question, Greg. Did you like this just past in September come out?
Yeah.
This bisexual awareness day. So this was just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. This was just a couple.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Welcome. Yes, I'm so happy you're here and you're able to share that. I'm so happy that you've had a positive experience. That's great.
It has been so positive, like so positive.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I kind of feel like there's three distinct moments for me as opposed to just kind of one, right? And the first one was, of course, I'd been through, all these feelings. They were coming there, and I mentioned before, I kept trying to find a reason for them, to blame it on something else and to get, some sort of excuse out of taking responsibility. I sorted things out myself. I saw some therapists. I had one therapist, look at me point blank and said, "No, you're not gay." And, that's kind of an interesting thing in retrospect. But eventually I just kind of came to the conclusion and came out to myself, which is like, no, there really isn't any other excuse for that or any other thing. I mean, it is what it is. I have to just kind of fess up to that. And then a little while after that was coming out to my wife and just kind of, and like I said, had all these responsibilities, and we sort of chose to not really change anything and sort of go on. But the bigger one was, coming out to the world, so to speak. And that was really, for me, driven by sort of two things. And the first one was depression. I had continued to go through this mode where I now knew and I now had accepted myself, but I couldn't tell anybody. And so every interaction, I mean, it's not like every interaction, your sexuality is the key topic, but, it's always, I got into this mode where any conversation I had, I was double thinking about every possible thing, even the most innocuous things, as to whether or not they might reveal something about me. It became very difficult, very hard to bond with people, even strained my relationship with my children and stuff. And then, the piece that really did was, I just have to admit, I got a bit of a push, which I kind of mentioned before, is sort of talking about feelings and stuff, and, kind of being on the fence about what I should do. And then, my partner at the time essentially said, well, it must be time. And I feel that was a little bit of a push that she gave me that sort of started really did start the whole process. And I'm pretty grateful for that, and, her support as well.
And I like how, Greg, you brought up terminology and looking at bisexual versus pansexual. For me, learning about transgender and what that meant. When I was growing up, the words that were floated around were transsexual, transvestite, she-male, cross-dresser. This is before transgender. And when I was looking up that identity, none of those really meant anything to me. I just felt that transsexual, it's not sexuality, it's more of an identity. But when I was exploring gender early on, it would be described as gender queer, gender fluid. So going to high school, I was wearing the painted nails and kind of putting hints and clues about my gender identity early on. But in terms of being able to fully express it, there's nothing I could really gravitate towards. So for me, when I realized to come out was, one, finding what transgender, what it meant to me, and just finding that identity and choosing to come out. And two, it was more of a decision whether to choose covering and choose a lifetime. And I like how Jeff brought this up. I just didn't want to be depressed anymore. I didn't want to cover anymore. And I didn't want to have this anxiety of people, finding out my secret before anyone else did. It's something that just caused me such high anxiety for almost a lifetime. And when I chose to come out, I just felt that at that moment I had full control of my life, as if there were no secrets to hide. and now I could start to live. Yeah, and that's why I chose to come out as trans.
Sarah, it's really interesting that you and, I just sort of think back about this, you and Gregg sort of both brought up this concept where you went through this exploration time where you kept going to like Googling on the internet and stuff, trying to find, looking up these words and trying to figure out who you were. And I so had that experience. I'll date myself a bit to say it was a little bit different age because I went from library to library looking for books about this and trying to find resources and stuff. And I'm so glad you came up with something because I got zipped in my search.
Yeah, when I was like, I was part of a TV generation, and I remember like misrepresentations of gender identity. Like, I don't know if you folks remember the show Silver Spoons. I don't want to talk about it. Yeah, now I'm aging myself, right? And I remember just like when like main characters dressed as female, I gravitated that as identity, but that wasn't really identity. That was just, dressing up or being an imposter of that identity, which, like, if you see that negative representation, it's as if you're seeing like, oh, I'll just be seen as a male and female attire. I'd be cross-dressing, but that wasn't me. That was not my gender identity. So seeing media representation today and seeing more folks visibly out as non-binary or transgender is affirming, I feel, for folks to live authentically.
Do you find that you are kind of gravitate towards certain types of media that have the representation that represents you? Because I found that for myself as well. I earlier this year, an album came out and I was listening to it and I was like, I'm really connecting with a lot of these concepts. And it was, if I could talk about it, the artist Halsey, who is a very, very out bisexual, put out her album that is incredible, and I've listened to it so many times this year. And I like, there are certain concepts in some songs that I'm just like, this this feels so like refreshing.
Yeah.
To listen to something or to find yourself exposed to a type of media that is representative of who you are. It's extremely refreshing, or at least that I've found.
Yeah, well, the one artist I find refreshing for me is Frank Ocean, because
Yes. Oh yeah.
Seeing femme representation in a predominantly male masculine art form, to me, I just find that so refreshing. So I grew up in hip hop. I love hip hop till I die, and just seeing that femme representation within a masculine identity, that's what I shoot towards in terms of finding identity. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really refreshing when, all the scenarios of, this notion of when you get reinforcement of people like you, like for me, I remember, when I first started to do this process, right? The first time I walked into a gay bar, I was like, wow, this is really cool. But the media, I guess when it happens to the media, it's really good. I think it's scarce. And, the thing that really, I often just really get annoyed at how little there is in terms of gender neutral music. Anything, it seems like the music is highly oriented towards, heterosexual relationships. And we could just use they and them in those songs and they would suddenly, apply. And you can only like change the pronouns as you sing along so much. So
that's so funny, Jeff. I was just thinking that the other day. I can't really say like I want a man. Wait, what? It doesn't fit for me. So great. Those are really great experiences, and thank you so much. I have another follow-up question, and Sarah, you touched on it a little bit about your place of work being really open and accepting of this transition that you made into becoming your authentic self. What about others? Like, what impact has coming out had on you personally or professionally since you've made this this choice to live your true self?
Oh, I definitely have a lot to say on that, boy. So when I graduated from UC Santa Cruz, I was in mental health. And in mental health, it was a little bit easier to be out. And so I was out to my clients, and that was much easier. And then I transitioned to teaching. And I guess, and the internet at the time was kind of slowly coming into play. And I didn't have that same opportunity, even though I started teaching in Santa Cruz. I did everything I could to pass. I grew my hair. I purposely did all of these things. And at moments it bothers me that I went to this level, but at the same time I understood I did things to feel safe. And so I grew my hair out. I tried to dress quote unquote more feminine. And so I started teaching in a middle school in Santa Cruz. And I did have a, candid conversation with my principal because I didn't understand what it was like to try to come out in education. She really was like, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't come out. And, there's a great fun story behind it is one of the kids that really gave me the hardest time and pegged me like from day one that, oh yeah, you're definitely a lesbian. And was very rude and disrespectful to me. But later on, years to come, I see this kid in a gay bar in Santa Cruz, during Santa Cruz Pride, and it was amazing and wonderful. And we got a great picture together. We laughed about it, and he had his. And the most ironic thing is that in his entire family of all boys are all gay, so they were all there and just laughing about how a hard time that he had given me during that time. And it was like, and of course, come to find out he was also gay himself. And it was great, but I couldn't come out in education for a long time. It was very difficult for me. I moved on to teach at another middle school, also very affluent, very difficult to come out as a lesbian. Was very much swayed against it. I had a lot of unfortunate hate crimes that happened while I was at that school. And I think a little bit after that, I realized, I want to be out. My goal was to, because of my hard time coming out, was to help other youth, was to really be there for other youth to come out, to give them that, and to look like me, to not like covered up by being fake. And so I moved on to teach in a high school where I was able to, lead at the time, GSA, Gay Straight Alliance group. And so that I could be me and I could have pictures of my wife and girlfriends and people that I was dating and not like, and they'd ask, it wasn't like, no, that's not my roommate. No, this is my partner. This is my girlfriend. This is my wife. And it was very interesting when I did get married in 2008 to try to explain why I was not going to be at school for a few days to the kids. And I said, I'm getting married. And one of the kids was like, oh, to a man. And another kid was like, no, like dummy, basically, you should get married to a woman. And I was like, yes, I'm getting married to a woman. And that was like a huge can of worms. And so it was hard to like maneuver all of that in a professional setting, being a teacher, trying to like be cautious of the words I was using, how I was putting it out, because right away, it was like, oh, you're talking about sex. I'm like, no, I'm not talking about sex, and unfortunately, that's kind of how it came out. So it definitely took some process. There was definitely a lot of sleepless crying nights of like, do I want to teach? Is education the right place for me? Is this going to help me, feel good about myself to do this? And, through definitely a lot of talking to other people and realizing that I wasn't the only one in education that was gay and that was having these issues. And so I put myself out there to work with other people that I also knew that were teachers to help. And so, yeah, professionally, it was definitely an up and down, but now it's a really awesome upcycle in education. So I'm glad that I stuck through it.
I consider myself to be extremely fortunate because generationally, as a millennial, a lot of my peers are very open to are either allies or are a part of the LGBTQ community. So I've found that among people that are my own age and younger, it was a lot easier for all of us to express who we are and our identities. And also, I consider it to be an extreme privilege to also be living in Silicon Valley, where we do have a very robust LGBTQ community. And my job is very, very, very accepting of all types of people. So when I was able to come out to my coworkers, they all were like, cool, awesome. We love you. Sweet. Thank you for speaking your truth. And I know that not everybody had that. And I also know that other generations have not been able to have that same privilege. So I am able to at least understand where that comes from. And yeah, it's very, yeah, sorry, my brain decided to start fizzling out there, but I professionally, it has been it has been a lot easier for me than I know that it has been for many, many other people.
Yeah, I mean, I think work-wise for me, it was to some extent, at one level, is a bit of a non-issue. I mean, it never really came up. But on the other hand, at least professionally, I really have adopted this notion, which is that it's not something that I'll hide, but I'm not necessarily going to go out of my way to make a point about it in a lot of cases. I mean, there is this part, there's still this notion that, at least when I'm at work, I want to be known for the work I do, right? I don't necessarily want to be the gay guy, so, to some extent. I think that's changing. I've got a new job now, and, it's a much more open environment. Hopefully we're going to establish an ERG. So, I mean, that will probably change a little bit as we're there. But I think the biggest professional impact for me was, I got let go from my, downsized out of a position last year. And ultimately my new network that I had developed after I came out was the way I got my new job. So I guess, my professional impact is I'm working now. So.
Great. Yeah. Jeff, it's really like how you said, I'm not sure if I want to be known as the gay one or, at work. And for me, it's definitely different. For me, I'm like when I'm at work, but I've been working remotely since the whole, COVID-19 pandemic. But my entire cubicle is full of rainbows and flags and unicorn hanging from the ceiling. So I'm definitely out there. And, I think it really just letting yourself be exactly who you are is important in your workplace. So I'm so glad that, Vivian, it seems like, in the teaching environment, it would be more difficult, especially because you're dealing with students and then you have the parents and you have to deal with their belief system. So besides your workplace environment, is there any, what positive or negative effects, and we might have already touched on this a little bit, but what has, coming out done for you positively or maybe negatively? I'm hoping, we don't see a lot of that, but what has been the effect on your life, your personal life since coming out?
I find that I feel like I have a weight lifted off my shoulders personally.
Wow.
Like I've been carrying around this, I don't know if you would call it a secret or what, but I feel as though I've been carrying this. I've had mental health issues, and I've dealt with depression and anxiety for much of my life, and I'm still going to have that. But I feel so much better about myself and about understanding who I am and where I'm coming from since coming out. It was just like after I had done it, I went like this. I said, okay, it's done. And now I'm just going to continue with my day. And then as those messages of support from my friends and my loved ones have started to come out, it's really been like, oh, I am still accepted. People still love me. People still care about me. And it's been wonderful. Like being able to wake up in the morning and knowing I am being who I am, my true self every day. It's only been a couple of weeks, but it has been like just there's this extreme amount of elation I found. At least in my limited experience in coming out, that is.
You know, to think about that, Nicole, I was thinking it took 5 years for me to tell my parents, tell my father first. I'd been dating my first girlfriend for a very long time. And we had just recently broke up when I come out to my dad. My dad was a little hesitant about telling my mom at the beginning. But, you know, just kind of fast forward to when, you know, yes, my parents were aware that, you know, gay marriage was legal. And they were aware that I had a partner. And I told them after the fact that we got married, but the best and amazing part was that, you know, when we were going to have a child, my parents' acceptance of Mateo and my life with a kid and my life with having a wife had really changed. I don't know if it was the validity of it being now accepted or not accepted, but like now it's real and now it's legal. You know, and I think I was trying to like massage that more carefully. Just like I said, you know, my parents were born and raised in Egypt. You know, they had an arranged marriage. And so personally, their idea of what gay people, they had no idea I was gay. They didn't think about that. That wasn't really in their repertoire of like what it was going to be like when they had kids. So, you know, personally with my parents they've come an extremely long way in accepting me. You know, even though the process through the time was not necessarily easy, but, you know, seeing them realizing, you know, that I'm just a person who is loving another person and who also wants to have a child and to raise a child. And that was amazing. And it honestly gave me a lot of hope as far as like how the community would deal with me and just queer people, because I saw that there was ability to grow in, you know, if you are loved, you continue to be a good person. That has nothing to do with, you know, who you choose to marry. And so I feel extremely fortunate, you know, even though it wasn't like overnight, I was accepted. I also know that I came out at a different time. I also know where my parents had come from and how they were raised. And so I try to, you know, keep that all in mind. But, you know, as far as friends and extended friends and, you know, everyone was really great. And everybody was like, oh, we always knew, you know, it just, to be honest, I think I was the one who had the hardest time. I was the one that was constantly critical of myself, that I had this vision of what it was going to be like. And my vision had nothing to do with being a woman, not even in the slightest. So.
For me, I feel that like seeing like big cultural shifts and being able to be impacting those shifts. So seeing greater trans representation and like where we're beyond the days of cisgender, you know, heterosexual folks playing trans roles in the media, right? Because the trans backlash is real and you will be called out on it. Seeing the acceptance or the greater acceptance of non-binary folks, the acceptance of they, them as a pronoun. Just being part of that cultural shift for me is very exciting to be part of, and knowing that maybe the work that I'm doing is somehow contributing to that change. I remember during Silicon Valley Pride, we had a pickup party, and there was someone that I met online recently that I saw them at the pickup party, and I introduced myself because I just followed their social media, and I thought they're just awesome, right? Turns out that when they were telling me their story, they told me a time when I went to Silver Creek to do a talk there, and they were in the background before transitioning, and they were just, you know, in the room just hearing a little bit about my talk, and I was just like, so in some way, somehow being visible, being out allows people to see where they could be, like, without knowing it, even just being that representation for someone, it gets going in their head. So when kids see me, I feel that like I get clocked. So in the trans community, it's called clocked, or being pointed out as trans. And for me, it works both ways, where I could take it, with the grain of salt, or I could take it very negatively or very positively. And it comes out in really profound ways sometimes. But sometimes when people see identity in folks, that's where they gravitate towards that. And this is where I totally feel for the bisexual and the non-binary community, because the microaggressions that are out there between amongst these community, they're really real. So I'm super delighted that Gregg and Vivian, you had like these positive experiences, but I've heard a lot of stories where like someone can come out as bi and they'll just say like, well, you're not bi, you're just like, you're maybe just a little curious, or they invalidate your identity, right? And I'm not saying this will happen or this did happen. I'm just saying that this is what I've heard, especially for me. And I don't think my just sexual orientation gets questioned a lot, because trans is kind of like, that's a big thing. And for me, sexuality is very fluid. So, in the beginning of the year, I identified as pansexual, but right now I'm more like bisexual, or to be more succinct, bi plus, because I don't know, the plus just makes me feel a little bit more secure with it. But even for non-binary folks, let's face it, like a lot of kids are coming out queer, and some people think that because they identify as non-binary or non-binary male or non-binary female, there's this like, well, how could that even exist? Like that makes no sense. It's not for someone to place their opinions on them, right? It's more so, this is my identity, and I want to share a little bit more about myself. I want to come out to you. I want to trust you. But in a lot of the negative experiences I've heard about, and even myself, when you share your identity with someone and how you feel and who you are, not getting that level of like respect, getting either microaggression, or even like there's been many a times where I come in a room and I talk about, trans equity, trans social justice, and do all this gender orientation and sexual identity kind of like talk. But just not getting that kind of like empathy or that acknowledgement or that understanding in return, it's a little rough. So that's why when I'm in amongst queer people, I light up. like you see me like, ah. But whenever I'm in a non-queer space and I'm trying to advocate or teach or educate, it comes off a little rough sometimes, and I make sure I just check myself not to come off as angry when I do a talk. But queer folks, I love you, and I see you, and I love events like this.
So we have about 10 minutes. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting. Sarah, you bring up something that I occasionally, I try to really, avoid the social media arguments, but occasionally I get goaded into them. And I posted to someone the other day who was essentially sort of debating had put something out there about like, there can only be two genders, and I couldn't kind of let that go. And I sort of replied, you could point to science, you can do all this other stuff, but on the other hand, how can you question what somebody believes they are to be? Like, I mean, it's them, and it's their belief system, and they are who you are who you believe you are, and no matter what happens around you or what people comment or think about that, you are who you are. And so, my end of the point is like, what's the point of bringing up the conversation? People are who they are.
I think the very profound thing that Sarah, you brought up was it's not for others to impose their understanding of who you are on you. It's for you to understand who you are as a person. I thought that was extremely profound. I've had thoughts, throughout this entire process of, well, my partner is female. So people are going to be like, oh, well, you're not actually bisexual. You're not actually, but it's not for them to decide for me. It's for me to decide for myself, and for me to understand, no, this is a part of my identity. And also, by the way, bisexual means I also like women. So it's not for you to decide. It's for me to decide and for me to understand about my own identity. So I love that. Thank you.
Well, and I think it just kind of goes back to like, well, what, you just didn't like to have sex with men, Vivian? I'm like, it's not about that. It's not about that. It's about my identity. This is who I am. This is who I feel in my core. It's not, you know, oh, let's try to fix you. Let's try to fix your relationship with men. Let's try to figure out what's missing within the part. I'm like, no, that's not, you're not hearing me. There's nothing. What's missing is that I am not comfortable. I am not okay with what's happening when I'm in a relationship with men. It doesn't feel right. And, you know, and it's like, of course, we always try that whole, well, how would it be if you try to kiss a woman? You know, if you're talking to a female who's straight, you know, and yes, I think that sometimes they kind of get that, but, you know, the people I talk to, when they talk about an opposite sex person, and you can see that the love that they have for that person, or you can feel that, and you're like, they talk about them passionately. I'm like, that's how I feel about women. That's exactly how I feel about it. And sometimes they kind of get that. And so that like, but yeah, I definitely hear that, Greg, because, oh no, oh, you can't be gay. You're with the man, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You are who you are. It's nobody else to decide and tell you how you should, who you should, and you know how you should love, or who you should be, or how you should identify, because that's personal to you. We have a few minutes left, and I really want to take this time for each of you to give advice to our audience. I want you, what are some tips that you would give to somebody who is being come out to? Like, let's say you're a parent or a friend of somebody who is coming out. What advice would you give to that person as far as how they should interact with that person that's coming out to them? And then likewise, what advice would you give to somebody that's thinking about coming out, that maybe hasn't made that decision yet?
So I'd kind of jump in here. There's sort of like several things just sort of popped to my mind. And, you know, the first one for me is I found that I've had a really, I've developed a very interest, or I don't know what the right word for, but having been young in an environment is very impressive. I have a real focus on kids, right? And my first thought of this is like, if you're a parent and your kid comes out to you, there's only one answer, and the only thing you say is "I love you." And then kind of as I broaden the window out there, I also sort of react to, if it's a friend, if it's a connection, it's a family member, sort of beyond that. I'm harking back to what my cousin told me. At one point, my cousin said, like, I've known you forever. Like, to change my opinion for this would be kind of stupid, right? And I think that's, your orientation or all of this doesn't really change the essence of the person you know. And so that's that. And, and kind of the last part of your question, right? If you're coming out, only you know the right time. So don't, it's not about when National Coming Out Day is or any of these other type of stuff. It is true that safety and security is really a part of what some people have to think about and kind of go through this. But, it's really powerful on the other side. So don't wait too long.
I just think about that. I would be the person that would really say, I'll listen. People that I would talk to say, hey, do you know somebody's coming? Just listen to them. Chances are they really haven't been listened to. Just listen to how they're doing, how their feelings are. You may not make sense of it. You may not understand. I think my kiddo they had come out as non-binary. Do I always understand? To be honest, I don't. I'm not non-binary, and so I can't. But that's not my place to like make that decision. I'm there to listen to them. I'm there to listen to their feelings and what they're going through. Because I think at the end of the day, my belief is we all know what to do. We all know the answers. And for kids and people who don't have the resources, yes, I would be beyond more than helpful to give them the resources that they need to get the support. But I feel like they just really want to be listened to and how their feelings are and be validated and go, yeah, that's how I felt when I came out. You know, that's how I felt, and you're okay. And yeah, and I would kind of give them some resources that are out there, maybe some great reading material, since that really helped me when I was coming out too.
I would say for me, National Coming Out Day should be celebrated worldwide. I mean, to be quite honest, it should be something that's not, I feel that National Coming Out Day should be for allies to come out. And when I say that, I feel that it's even more stronger for allies to say, I support this community. I support the LGBTQ community. I support Black Lives Matter. I am an ally for this. Like, coming out is a very profound thing, and everyone could celebrate in a manner where they feel that they have that capacity. So being an ally for the LGBTQ community and coming out as such, you know, joining those ERG groups, coming to Pride celebrations, going to a gay bar, and being okay with that. Like, I know a lot of folks feel that, like, I can't go to this scene because I'm not, you know, LGBTQ. I'm not that. But it's just like, who said? Like, it's okay to come out as an ally. It's okay to have fun. And it's okay to normalize what it means to be LGBTQ. For folks that are not out yet, I would say come out at your own pace. It's not for the world to decide when is the right time for someone to come out. It's only best for you to make that decision, and it's really based on so many different intersecting criteria. It could be, you know, own family situation, it might be support, it might be just finding your own identity. But coming out at your own pace and knowing that there's queer people out there to support you, that there's so many resources, there's so many different ways where you can find identity. And if you don't know, please reach out to these wonderful, amazing people, or to the groups locally, because there is identity and there's a space for you. When you're ready and willing and able to come out as your authentic self. And I relish in days like this to be able to not only encourage LGBTQ folks to come out and live authentically, but also for our allies to take part in the celebration and live authentically and be happy.
And I think I could never in any way, shape, or form compared with that amazing summary. Thank you, Sarah. Because I think I'm going to echo you and say, come out when you're ready. Take your time. There's no right or wrong time to come out. And if you aren't ready, you don't have to. Take your time, do research, do reading, reach out to some people and talk to some people within the community and find out where you fit. And if you are just an ally, absolutely just love the people that have come out around you and give them as much support as you possibly can. And it's okay if you get things wrong. And if you accidentally misgender someone, as long as you understand, I made a mistake and I can grow from this, and you correct it. I feel like that's something that we need to be able to do. Like, I've had people say things like, well, I always thought you were, I always thought you were this. Well, it's like, well, that's not your place. So let me decide that for myself. And then they would, as long as they say something like, okay, I'm sorry, I did not mean to do that, let me correct it, that's fine. But if you are an LGBTQ youth and you are not sure where you fit yet, that's okay. Take your time, do some research, and when you are ready, we will be here with open arms.
Thank you all so much, Greg. That was like, I have tears right now. Thank you so much, Sarah. What you said was wonderful. Thank you to all the panelists. I loved each and everything that you guys shared. You know, the LGBTQ plus community is unique in it of itself because we are a minority group that actually has to come out and identify ourselves as such. Other minority groups, they don't need to come out because they wear their minority in their physical appearance, whether it be their skin color or a person with disabilities. It's up to each of us. We know that the fight for equality belongs to each of us. So it's important that we are diligent, not only in fighting for the LGBTQ plus community and our rights, because they go hand in hand with all the other marginalized groups that are being persecuted, that are facing bigotry and hatred. So it is up to us to be diligent, to stand up for these marginalized groups as well as the LGBTQ plus population, because it is only united together that we will win this fight and we will truly see equality rise. Coming out is a radical act of bravery, and it deserves to be celebrated. So whether you have been out for a long time, whether you have just come out, or whether you are still waiting to come out for the perfect time, just know that the LGBTQ plus community is here. We're ready, we're waiting for you, and we will accept you with open arms. So with that, happy National Coming Out Day. Everybody go out and live your true authentic self while being safe with COVID-19. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
Thank you.